What's up, y'all? It's Friday. It's Friday! It's Friday! Just go crazy. It's Friday, baby. Hey, so I wanted to do something really fun and kind of special for you guys. I wanted to break down this song that I just finished producing, mixing, mastering with this artist, David Nolf, right here in California. He's in the hills here. And he's a singer, he's a songwriter, he's a rocker. I don't know. He produces a little bit as well. So I wanted to get into the session and I wanted to kind of break down the session for you guys. And also just if you come in, you pop in, you want to ask any questions about what I'm doing or why I did something, I thought it'd be cool to have a little live session, live Q&A, you know, the whole damn thing. So, yeah, so I'm just jumping in and, you know, this is pretty, you know, unscheduled. I didn't like plan this. Tomorrow I'll be doing live song reviews every Saturday and Wednesday. But today I just want to jump in live and I wanted to show you guys a breakdown of this song and, you know, just show you kind of how I did it, what I did. Sorry about the weird little thing on the screen, but, you know, and just kind of like go through the mix, the master, the production, the sounds, how I treated the vocals, all that kind of stuff, because I think people like to get a little deeper into a song, you know. They want to know how it was done, the way it was done, right? So let's jump right into it. I think this will be really fun. I'm just going to kind of show you the production. I'll show you the song. I produced it all in Logic Pro, so if you guys use Logic Pro, then hell yeah. If not, you can always take these principles and move them over to any DAW. Like, it really doesn't matter what DAW you're using, okay? So just so you guys know, I use Logic Pro, I use Pro Tools, use them both. But I wanted to jump in and just kind of give you a live breakdown of this. Will Smith, what's up, bro? Welcome. And give you guys an opportunity to kind of ask questions if you want to, or comments or whatever. But this is the track count. We're looking at 134 tracks. And yeah, there's vocals up here. This is my session, you know. I'm just going to play you a little bit of it, and then I'll play it maybe through the first like chorus, and then we'll go into verse 2, and then I'll just kind of break down the song and how it was produced, the ideas behind it, the plugins I used, why I used certain plugins, the arrangement and how I arranged it and produced it, and how I got the sounds and textures. So if you guys have any questions along the way, just pop them in the comments. So here we go. I'm just going to play a little bit of the song here. Let me mute my microphone so you don't hear double.
Find me heartless. You played your final.
All right, so that's part of the song. I won't get to the full part until I kind of break down what's going on, you know? So the biggest thing is, you know, I started with the drums, kind of getting the drums to be more of that like retro, I guess you could say 80s, you know, it sounds pretty 80s to me, but it's just kind of a sound that's been coming back, like the drum machine sound, you know. Doesn't necessarily need to be an 80s sound, but you know, just so happens that I use like these 80s inspired drums. So the first thing I started with was kind of like that drum pattern, and David came to me and he was like, hey, I got this track start and I think it's really cool. He had a different arrangement than this. It didn't have the drops in it. I have 2 drops in here. I thought to push it further and closer to like a cinematic feel. I wanted it to have a feel where you could cut it to a movie, right? Like it could feel like a movie. It can have like the emotions all the way from beginning to end. Like you could have the really sad kind of feel and the really kind of longing feel and missing you kind of feel. All the way to the fuck you feel, right? Of just like, you know, this drop here, right? Over all these scars, you know I die for you, but you wanna see the proof. You got me slowly bleeding out, my heart beneath your shoes, as I'm hanging off the roof, thinking about slowly floating down. So heartless, heartless, so heartless, 'cause you're heartless, heartless. So it's really important that we got all the emotions. It felt like something you could sync for a movie, a film trailer, but also it's a song that stands on its own. I think that's really important to this song. And, you know, it's a big reason why a lot of people come to me for production, right? They want to make something bigger than a record. They want to make something that's going to have big potential for, you know, big visual stuff, right? So just because I've been composing and scoring and working in film and TV for, you know, almost 10 years now, right? So this was kind of like, that was the feel for me. It was like, make it a song. It's got to be a pop song. It's got to have a cool vibe and be a little cutting edge and have like different genres blended in. But also it's got to have those big drops and those moments where you could feel the intensity and the rage of like that tagline, Heartless, right? So as I'm thinking about all these things, that's a lot of the stuff that goes into the production, and then telling the story. And the story to me had this idea of like, you know, this is what's going on and I'm not really vibing with it. And I don't know if you fucking with me or like what's going on, you know, and then it goes into a chorus, like, you know, kind of getting bigger. Then like it goes to verse 2 where we kind of, you know, the hero's journey. We talk about like him being more determined. The bass starts, you know, and we get more like, you know, I'm kind of getting fed up kind of shit. And then the last chorus going into a bigger drop, meaning like, you know what, you're so heartless. Like you're a piece of shit. Like basically you have to get that emotion across, but still be kind of cool about it. Not just, you know, yelling you're a piece of shit. You know? So let's get into a little bit. Where do you guys want me to start if you're in here? I can start wherever you'd like. If you want me to start with the drums, the vocals, whatever, I'm down to start with whatever. But, you know, it kind of came to me with a little bit of an arrangement and kind of like a mock-up, you know, that David had, which I thought was cool. I was like, yeah, this is dope. And then I just kind of changed out sounds and I started messing with stuff, right? The production piece of it, I bounced everything to audio, as you can see. This was all MIDI, and this is kind of a workflow thing I do, is I'm going to like make everything with MIDI and I'm going to, you know, do my stuff, and then I bounce it all to audio to mix it and master it. So I'm kind of like working as I go, right? I'm mixing as I go. I'm bouncing things down to audio once I feel like, yeah, that part is locked in, so that I can offload the computer a little bit from the MIDI stuff, but also that I can work with audio to edit and to mix and master. So that's my process, and I just wanted to break down that part of it up front. You could see like some big toms here. Looks like there's a contact instrument in there. Using Serum for some stuff. Using, you know, all sorts of stuff here. Let's show you some of the drop sounds, right? So just so you can understand kind of how things are designed with the sound. So I'm going to turn this one on and I'm going to unhide it. And this is just the MIDI part for one of the drop stacks, right? So in here, it's kind of like this sound here. I'll show you. Right, and that's a pretty typical sound, just like for a drop. It might actually be this sound. I'm sorry, I played you the wrong sound. Here it is. Right, so it's kind of metallic. It's got a big cutting sound. It's gonna like go in front of your face. Kind of jumps in front of the stereo image, which I think is really cool and important to a drop. So when we hear this all together, it sounds like this. Right, so it's kind of like just another texture layer in there, but I figure I'd start with this because, you know, the drops are stuff that, you know, takes a long time, and I didn't want this to be like a super crazy like EDM dubstep drop, so I didn't go that route. I'm trying to make it kind of more of a tasteful cinematic drop with some 80s textures and flavors that kind of fit the song, so it doesn't like completely detach from the song. So that's actually really challenging. That was the biggest challenge I had with this song, was like, how do we make this like epic, have drops in there that film editors are going to want to really, you know, chop to and stuff, but then also have a song where you could chop other parts from it, right? But it all works together as well. That's really important. So that sound, just to design that one sound, right, which you could see I have many layers of different sounds, chord drops, and I got, you know, the vocals chopped up here. I layered in my own screams in the back here. You know, there's a lot of stuff in here. So just for this one sound, to show you kind of how that's designed and how I would design a sound. Just one sound in production, right? I'll unmute this. And then I have all this on it, right? So I'll show you the patches, I'll show you the plugins I used and why I use them, all that stuff. So here, let's just put a loop around that. And then this Serum patch looks like it's BS Marsh. I don't know where that came from, but I probably messed with all this stuff. I usually mess with, like, you know, some of the octave stuff here. I'll mess with the waveforms, the wavetable stuff, you know, the filters. I'll mess with everything, the envelopes to get it to hit like I want, everything, right? So I designed that sound first. And then when I have that sound in mind, like, let's just bypass all this stuff and hear it without anything on it. It's a good bass sound, like a starting sound, not like a bass, like as in bass guitar, right? But a good bass sound for me. So that's like what I want. And then I love this this distortion, the Deconstructing too. And it looks like it's not active actually on my computer right now, so you're not even gonna hear that MIDI. But we can also just show you the audio of it. I don't know why it's not active. It's probably just because it's not under my account anymore. But I used Deconstructing to throw some distortion in it. The thing that Deconstructing does really well is, here, I'll play the sound after all the processing, and you can hear like kind of the distortion in there. Like if you hear that rolling over, that clipping, it's kind of like it's foldback distortion. It's like the preamp on the Deconstructing I really love because it drives really cool like that, right? It gives it a really cool sound and texture. So that mixed with the Decapitator gave me kind of like a really cool distortion algorithm that I liked. And then I actually threw on a third distortion and even a fourth distortion, right? So this is something that I think a lot of people overlook when they're sound designing, is that you don't have to just use one distortion plugin or one source of distortion. All distortion is going to be different things, right? There's going to be pentode, there's going to be triode, there's going to be, you know, what I'm using here, which has a harmonic FET right? FET and Zener blend. So these are all distortion from FET and then Zener diodes, right? So these are all different things distorting differently. Tape distorts differently. And we like to call it saturation when we're mixing, but at the end of the day, it's distortion. All of it's distortion, right? It's literally clipping out your source, but it all gives different harmonics. So what I try to do, and this is like a, you know, a T, which is probably a tube, and then this is a pentode, like a triode and a pentode, I believe, on the styles here. So this is another tube distortion, right? So what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to stack distortion so that I can get the odd and the even harmonics and the fuzz in between and fold it back and just make it pop, make it fucking crazy, you know, crush it, do some weird shit with it. So that's what I like to do with distortion, and that's how these sounds are, well, at least this sound was built. So I'll let you hear that kind of soloed and then in the mix again. Another thing is I didn't use this in the first drop because I want each drop to be different, right? So like for this drop, I didn't use that hit, that serum hit, right? So my first drop is going to be different than the second drop, which is really important so that it builds to that big end, right? So this is the first drop without that sound in it. Heartless. Why you gotta be so heartless? So that's another thing with sync licensing and making music more dynamic, is that by the time you get to the end of the song, you know, and your listener's been hooked in the whole time, you have to make sure that they've been entertained the whole time, right? By the time you get to that last drop, that last chorus, you have something even more exciting, more interesting, bigger, stacked up differently, right? So that even the editor, when they're looking through music to sync, when they start skimming through the music, they go, oh, whoa, that drop was cool. And then they see the next drop at the end and they go, whoa, this one's even crazier. It's really important, right? That's important for editing and cutting to picture and syncing. So that's kind of the mindset behind this stuff as I do different things in different parts of the song. Okay, so that's kind of like the drop section. There's a ton of stuff in that drop section. You know, there's these vocal chops. You know, yeah. Here, I'll show you the vocal chops here. Right, so that's a lot of automation, that's panning, that's doing some crazy shit with the distortion vox. The distortion vox is actually, these are both going to this distortion vox bus, right? So this bus has, you know, so much stuff on it. Like it has this again, which is actually off because, like I said, it's just bypassed. It doesn't, I don't have the license up right now on it. And I've already done this master, you know, I bounced it a while ago. So that's the DAW cassette. That gives me another distortion. The Pro Q3, I think. Yeah, we're just taking out some of that boxy shit, nasally stuff. CLA vocals, I'm spreading it a little bit. The slap gives it some nice space, gives it some dynamic in the back. Little bite on the treble, sub, and then I'm compressing. This is actually parallel compression, just slamming it in, right? And then a noise gate, because all that processing really does like start to cause a lot of noise. So when it's not singing, not going, it gates it out. And then an RVox right at the end just to contain everything. Okay, so that's the bus right there. On the individual vocals, you can see one's panned a little left and one's panned a little right. We have channel EQ, where I'm just getting rid of literally all the bullshit down here. Auto-tune, you know, I like the auto-tune effect, especially on like a drop like this, because I want it to sound modern. I want it to have that kind of mechanical sound to it. And then I got a compressor on here, which is the Logic stock compressor. Looks like I'm holding it back just a little bit. Doesn't look like I'm doing much here. Yeah, 2-to-1. And then the Maserati vocals, which he actually had this plugin on in his demo. And I don't usually use it because it kind of makes things, for me in vocals, it makes it just a little bit too like high, mid, cutty, and peaky and kind of screechy. So, and people overdo this processor a lot. They start really messing with this shit and putting all this stuff on. And I think it does too much for me sometimes. So this is just compressing. There's not really any effects going. Looks like, yeah, no effects going on it. Little treble boost and no bass boost. Looks like it's cutting some bass. So that's about it right there. And when you go through that, it just kind of gives it a little bit more of a record feel. And then I'm finishing it off with the JJP vocals. This is also something that he had on. I don't typically use these plugins. I'll just design my own chains. And that's what these plugins are, really. If you don't know what the Maserati vocals, the JJP vocals, strings, all that stuff, it's literally just like these guys, Jack Joseph Puig's like chain, Tony Maserati's chain, like where they're sending to, parallel compression, they're sending their verb, their delays, and it's basically their chain and then modeled into Waves plugins. So for me, I like those, but I think, sometimes those are just a little overkill for me. So what I do is I'm going all through that stuff with both these vocals, and, this is what it ends up sounding like. Okay, so that's kind of like the vocal drop sound, and I have all these other things, and of course I got my little voice in here, which I have like a different timbre than his vocal, so I thought it'd be cool for the end to have this stacked in. So that's what this is, and I'll show you what that sounds like with those vocals in. So Heartless. So a really important aspect of that is it just adds another layer and makes it sound a little bit more angry. It makes it sound a little more edgy, and it is distorted to crap. So, I actually use the thermal plugin on this, which I don't typically use, but I really like this this distortion from Output. So, they do great stuff. Like, I don't know any plugin that they make that's like, oh, that's a shitty plugin, right? So I pop this on there and it just gives it a nice little edge. It gives it a little more warmth. It also, like, if you listen to the vocals in this part, they sound kind of just like in the track, right? They sound in that world. They sound like they're part of the synths, you know what I mean? So Heartless. So Heartless. And again, I am missing some of my plugins on this, so it's really not fair because the vocals should be more out front. Just because you have like other things on here that aren't registering on my computer right now. Just because I need to plug in the license, to be honest. So the Decimort's not playing right now, which is a big part of this sound. It's pushing things forward. I use the preamp gain on it, etc. So let's get into kind of the lead vocal sound and show you that. Or maybe even just, show you the drums here. I think the drums were a big part of it for that feel, that kind of like, new modern 80s new wave kind of vibe. And anybody that says The Weeknd, come on, guys. You guys act like The Weeknd was the first one to start doing like 80s throwback vibes. Like, it's just absolutely ridiculous. It's just because that's all people know because it's pop, right? So, but no, The Weeknd was very far behind on that sound, just so you know. He stole it from the underground and got a bunch of pop producers to remake that kind of sound. But yeah, there were plenty of bands and groups doing that sound much further before The Weeknd dropped his album with 80s stuff on it, right? It's just kind of funny that everyone thinks The Weeknd, they're like, oh, it's kind of like The Weeknd's new stuff. It's like, do you guys listen to any other music besides what's spoon-fed to you? So anyway, here's the drums. I digress. Here's the drums, and this was a huge part of the record sound, right? Like, I'll just kind of play this part and then put the drums in solo.
You've been waiting for my call all night, still alive, but something just don't feel right. You're looking for a fight. You've been...
Okay, so a big part of this drum sound that I wanted to make sure I hit was modern, but then also have some kind of urban, you know, genre kind of stuff in there. And I hate using urban genre as a term, but, you know, kind of like some trap hats, some more modern, you know, sounds that you wouldn't expect in like an 80s sounding record, right? Like I really wanted to cross genres on this one. I wanted to feel like, you know, everyone's pissing in a, you know, we're in a big circle around the world just taking a piss, you know, in a big bucket or a big kiddie pool or something. I don't know. Just making sure you guys are paying attention still. But yeah, this is what this hi-hat is. And then I'll pop in the snare, the kick, all that stuff. Show you what that is. Okay, so those guitars, I really wanted to put in like a little moody kind of Chris Isaac kind of vibe in there. The reason I wanted that is because this is like the pre-chorus, right? And then it goes into the big chorus. But so I got Will, who actually works with me. I got him to play those guitar chords. I could play guitar, but he just could find the chords a lot quicker than me. And I also don't really like to like plug in my guitar and produce myself, because I typically find that I'll do it and then I'm like later I'm like, oh, I hate that. You know, I want someone to replay that, because I like to be the controller, tweaking the sound, getting the tone, having the ideas, producing it, you know, engineering it and telling the player what I want, you know, try this, try that, instead of my brain having to try and do all of that. And a lot of people do that, but I find that the music starts to sound uninspired, right? It sounds like someone just started playing everything and they're like, yeah, that's good enough. I don't know, you know, when they could have found someone that fit the vibe a lot better. And as producers, that's what we do, right? We're supposed to find people that fit the sound and the vibe in our head the best. And that's who we have do the parts that we know that they can do way better than we can, right? So that's how you make a great record, I think. So that's this. The synth bass is like, you know, something really special to me. I really like this synth bass. I had a lot of fun with it. I kind of tried to get it to pulse a little bit more and be offbeat, so it's like hung behind the beat, really heavy. So this is a Spire preset with an R comp and a Pro Q. And I just basically, you know, here, let's see if we can pop this open. Spire, so I can show you what that is. So Spire has some cool sounds in it. This is the bass sound that I used, and I tweaked everything. I wanted a big bottom. I carved out a lot of the low mids. I wanted his vocals, and I wanted the drums, the punch of the drums to kind of come through, the big snare, you know, that fatness. And then the Pro Q here, just like taking out as much as possible out of the vocal range for those kind of basses. A lot of times when people use those 80s basses or those retro future, you know, synth basses, they leave this stuff in, and that's what ruins it, right? Is that it blocks the vocals really heavy. So I take the top out because it gets really tinny, especially considering it's not an analog synth. So I wanted it to sound more analog. I do have a Prophet 6 here, but I find that the Prophet 6 doesn't do like those beefy low basses very well. I think you really need more of like an Oberheim, a Moog, you know, something that's like made for that low bass kind of stuff, that growly stuff. So Spire had it. I just had to shape it a little bit, right? So this is what I ended up with through that, which I thought came out really cool. Okay, so a really big important part of that is that the lead vocal has to be absolutely massive and has to fill all those little gaps that you're missing with like just drums and bass and hi-hats, right? So I make a ton of space for vocals. I think if you want a bigger sound, you have to clear a lot more space. It's not add more things. I think any good orchestrator or arranger knows that and they understand that. But, you know, being a composer and composing around vocals and dialogue and all that stuff all the time, you know, for the last, 8 years, 9 years, it's like I even making a record, you realize, no, you need a lot of space for the vocals. Like you need to clear everything for the vocals because like, look at all these plugins on the vocals. First off, Pro Q, I'm just like shaping it, getting rid of his nasal. Got some auto-tune on there, give it that modern tone. The LA2A, CLA vocals, the de-esser, right? Pro Q2 or 3 just to, get rid of some of that crispy stuff and tuck it back in the mix. And then all the sends, right? Like I'm sending to Valhalla, which is going to be a short verb, which I do this very often. I do a short verb, 159 seconds. I just find the tempo of the song. And that's a short verb for this song because this song's kind of slow, 85 BPM. And then I have a parallel compression here, the API 2500, which thickens out the vocals, just gives it more, it's filling up more space, right? And then the last verb I have is the vintage Valhalla again, but longer, 3.87, right? So it's almost like twice as long as the short one. And then a Pro Q3 here to clear up some more space. Like vocal sits here, I didn't want that, right? I just want and I didn't want all this chunky stuff in the verb. I want lush verbs. So I want that verb to not be heard, but to be felt, right? To be sense of space is basically what I'm always doing with mixing, right? So this is like I'm producing and mixing on the fly and working the sounds and bouncing the MIDI. And that's how I'm making this record, right? Because it's a sync record. You have to get it done and you have to do it kind of all together. So that's what this ends up being is like you have a lot of space for the vocal and sometimes you can hear the verb, but most of the time it's just filling in space. Like I'll show you it, in and out on those sends. All right. It's a huge difference.
It's getting late, want tonight. You've been waiting for my call all night. I'm still alive, but something just don't feel right. You're looking for a fight. You've been singing all my praises till the day ends. Then you ghost at night. You lie in late, want tonight. You've been waiting for my call all night. I'm still alive, but something just don't feel right. You're looking for a fight.
And the whole time I'm thinking about the vibe of the song. The song is kind of like, to me, it just feels like even the stuff he's saying is like you coming home late, you want to fight, you know, all these little lines about like just kind of being like dark in a dark place with this person that you love, you know, or you think you love or whatever, right? A bad relationship. So I kind of want everything to be kind of like soaked into the track, rather than if you bypass it, it's all just nice and centered, and it's really compressed and it sounds really pop, but it doesn't fit like what I'm going for and like the story. Like I want you to hear the story as in like a feeling, rather than like here's his vocal and he's very focused. Like, no, I want it to be like he's not really that focused and he just doesn't really know what's going on, right? There's a little bit of disorientation, and that's what those reverbs really do. They fill that out. They make him feel in the track and in this world, you know, in his head, in the relationship, whatever it is. And then if we get into the pre-chorus here, we start getting into a little bit more airy, deep, you know, confused kind of vibes is what I get out of that. And that's how I translate it with the reverbs and the effects.
Then you ghost at night. You lie in darkness. You find me heartless. You played your final card. Am I worth saving? The truth is scraping up.
See, I hit stop and like that verb just goes, no. It just goes forever. It's just space. It's like, you know, dreamy and kind of like, man, I don't know what I'm doing in this relationship kind of vibe, right? That's, I don't know, like once you get good at the plugins and you understand what they do and how to shape them, you can start to shape the emotion that you're trying to get across, right? That's a really important aspect of this. Same thing though, like I have almost the same exact chain on it. I'm using 1176, kind of give it a little warmth, a little more warmth. And then CLA vocals, again, de-esser, I'm sending to these reverbs, you know, and I'm probably sending just a little bit more of this long one and the short one. And the short one just kind of sets the vocal back into the track. So that's it, right? Like, so this part like kind of sounds a little more dreamy and spacious. And then I always like, you know, with these guitars, I used Bias Amp 2, and I also used Bias Effects 2, right? So I have a couple different things here that I'm using as far as like guitar processing plugins. And that's just like part of the game, right? Like, again, like I don't have some of these activated because I'm just not, I've already bounced this mix. It's already been finished. But I need to like log in and show you that. But anyway, CLA vocals actually on this guitar, which gives it width. So I'm using this width and I'm using the roof and just a little bit of verb, the tight verb, and pushing with, again, parallel compression, right? So just wanted to show you guys kind of some of this track and show you parts of it. And then the second verse, you know, going into the second verse, I don't know if you guys want me to keep going, I'll keep going. You know, I've been on it for 38 minutes breaking this down, but if you want me to keep going on this, I'll keep going and I'll get into, you know, verse 2, I guess. Just wanted to give you a little inside look at, you know, the production, the mix, the master. Wasn't going to go into crazy amounts of detail. I think it's more about the storytelling and finding the sound, you know, through like what's going on with the lyrics and how he's singing and how we're approaching the song. So I think that was more important than anything. But if you want me to keep going, I'll keep going. I'll show you verse 2. If not, I'll kind of wrap it up here. All right. I don't see anybody really wanting to see the rest of it. So all good. I won't waste anyone's time. But yeah, there's basically, to wrap it up here, there's a bunch of different stacks and different parts. And if you look at it from, you know, kind of the bird's eye view, you see kind of how it goes from not very much to a little bit more to a little bit more to a lot more, right? So that's kind of how I like, that's how I like a good song to work, right? It should just kind of like keep growing. You should get to the last chorus, last drop, last part of the song, the outro, whatever, and it should feel like, you know, something bigger or something more important or whatever. Maybe you're wrapping up the song. I don't know what you're doing, but that's what I think is a pretty good arrangement for me, and that's typical, right? And you can see all these drop cuts, like all the things that I did to do the drop, you know, vocal chops, all that stuff. And I just mess around, you know, I mess around until I find something and arrange something right. Okay, so Christian's here, he's good. Craig's good. Okay, so we'll go a little bit further. So basically when we get into verse 2, because I'll get into verse 2 now. The first drop is something to kind of pull you out of the song. Okay, so I really thought that was important. Coming from this chorus to the first drop, it's just kind of like a, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. And I hate expected music. Like, I'm so bored of like a trap beat going for, for 3 minutes and like saying the same thing over and over. I'm like, all right, dude, that's cool. Great song. I get it. Like, I'm not trying to smoke a joint for all day long and get fucked up in the studio. And, I'm 37 years old. It just doesn't appeal to me. It appeals to other people. I get it. It's pop music right now, but it doesn't appeal to me. So I make music that appeals to me, right? So I'm going to show you this first chorus going into this first drop so you can understand kind of what we were doing here.
Then you ghosted night. You lie in darkness. You find me heartless. You play your final card. Am I worth saving? The truth is scraping over all these scars. You know I die for you, but you wanna see the proof. You got me slowly bleeding out. My heart beneath your shoes as I'm hanging off the roof, thinking about slowly floating down. Heartless, why you gotta be so heartless?
So that was an immensely important part of this track and wanting to make it a little bit more syncable, i.e. I want an editor to grab this and go, wow, this has a lot of cool pieces to it that I could put together to make a whole piece out of a film trailer, TV, promo, whatever, right? So I want this to make money. That's what I do. I'm a producer. I produce to make something market viable. That's always what I'm looking for my client, unless my client says, no, I'm not concerned with that. Let's just do some crazy shit. Then, dude, I worked with Mark Mothersbaugh for 5 years, bro. Like, I do crazy shit. That's easy, right? We can do some fun, crazy shit. But I want to do something that's directly for a specific market. Okay, I'm like, this is specifically for something. Okay, so I'm not in the trap market. We're not in the R&B market. We're not really shooting for the pop market. We're shooting for I want to sync the crap out of this. I want this on TV shows, TV promos, movie promos, trailers, commercials. I don't know, like anything and everything. Video games, right? I want it on shit that's gonna be like, yo, I got a $50,000 check for you and your client, so that I can make him money, so that we can build business, because that's what I'm trying to do, is build business. Hope I made myself clear. All right, Christian's got a question here. I have a question about overall tonal balance. I always seem to be getting the balance wrong during production. Okay, so that's a big part of it, Christian. I don't know if you picked up my song creation formula, but I go through like the full process. It's literally 7+ hours of me like, okay, I'm going to make a track. It's going to be for this. It's going to be this. Okay, now I'm going to start it. Now I'm going to use these sounds, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to shape these sounds as I go. And that's a big part of it, is shaping the sounds as you go. Modern production, modern mixing, mastering is about shaping sounds and sound designing as you are producing. It's not anymore about grabbing a sound out of the box, a Omnisphere patch, playing it, and then going, okay, that's good. I'm going to rap on it, right? Like, it's just not that anymore. So you may start a track like that, but as you go, you have to shape shift. You have to make it more interesting. You have to make textures. You have to design sounds as you go, so that you're not like going, oh man, I left that stock sound on and I'm not getting the tonal balance of like what I was looking for with this record, right? Okay, so you're scooping too much of the mids out, yeah. So that's the thing, Christian. Like, as I'm producing and doing this and writing this stuff, I'm constantly tweaking. So I'm hearing and I'm going, okay, I think I'm scooping too much mids. I'll go back, dude. I'll literally go back to this vocal and I'll be like, okay, I need to back up on this. You see what I'm saying? Like, I just back up and I go to both of these, and you can hit X. I don't know why this mixer does that sometimes. Such a logic error. But, you know, and then I just copy over that thing, you know, Option, drag it over, right? So I'm constantly shaping and shifting and changing plugins as I go. And I got like a 10-core iMac, you know, so it's, you know, with 128 gigs of RAM. So my computer's made to produce music, to create compositions, to mix, master, to use a ton of plugins and tweak as I go. And a lot of people are like, yo, that's so many plugins on your stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's because I'm tweaking as I go, right? So I'm designing the sound and then I'm also mixing it and mastering it into everything. So if you look here, dude, like it's going to a woe bus, right? Like just these woes. These are all going to woe bus, which is then shaping it a little bit more. Like, okay, I need to push out the 1K a little bit and I need to scoop more of that. And then it's hitting a stereo room, right? A stereo maker. And then it's hitting a Townsend, right? Which is, you know, basically like holding things together and compressing it a little bit. So as I go, I'm constantly changing and shifting and shaping the sound. And that's why like when I love producing in Logic is because I can produce, mix and master all at the same time. And that's just kind of like a more modern workflow, right? And then like the chorus Vox intro. See, I got this bus. Like I'm shaping all that as I'm going, you know, bam, 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 right? There you go. So I'm just constantly shaping and shifting things and moving things and, you know, getting the sound right and all that stuff. So it's a big part of the process. You know, and you may be scooping too much mids, so you got to look at like where you're scooping the mids, solo things out, figure out what's missing mids, like constantly be thinking about that because that's what mixing is, right? It's a balance. It's not a step-by-step process. It is a modular process. So hopefully that helps. But anyway, when we get to verse 2, I really wanted it to kind of pick up pace. I wanted it to feel like, okay, a determination, right? So we get this refrain after the drop, and then we go into this verse 2, which I'm going to play for you, and I'm just going to kind of break down what that thought process is behind the sounds there, right? And like what we're doing with the bass, all that stuff.
Somehow it's always my fault, the best disguise. But something just don't feel right. Not looking for a fight. You've been singing all my praises till the day ends. Then you ghost at night. You lie.
All right, so here's where he's starting to get a little more determined and kind of like almost feeling like he's going to take action. He's going to break up with this girl. He's going to call it quits, etc. So here's where I have to show that determination. Determination is showed by more driving, by more, you know, maybe something comes up. You know, like, so I have a little bit of everything. I got a little guitar going, ding, 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 you know, chugging kind of stuff. But this is probably the most important part is that you start getting this bass that starts coming in that's doing like eighth notes, right? And then you also have this counter melody that comes in, this lead that I played in on, I think I played this in on the Prophet here. But you know, it gives you kind of like that motivating movement, right? So the song starts to move. It doesn't stay stagnant. It doesn't play the same as the first verse.
Somehow it's always my fault, the best disguise. But something just don't feel right. Not looking for a fight. You've been singing all my praises till the day ends. Then you ghost at night.
Right, and then we go back into that pre-chorus where it gets glassy again. But this is a big part of it, and then also the hi-hats, the kick pattern changes a little bit. It's just a little bit faster. It's a little more determined. So as I bring in these hi-hats and stuff, you start to get a little bit more of like a, ooh, shit's gonna change. You know, I gotta make a change. And, you know, like there's that saying, like, you know, people don't change until the pain of staying the same outweighs the pain of making a change, right? So I feel like that's a big part of this song is like, he's getting the storyteller, the character right here, right? Like he's getting to a point where the pain of staying in this thing is outweighing the pain of like making a change and you know, doing something different. So that's kind of the idea behind the music, right? And the production parts. It's like, yo, how do we tell that story with sound? That's really important. Like, how do you translate that? That's what a producer does, right? We're a liaison between, and an engineer, a good engineer does this too. We're a liaison between the artist and the storyteller and the actual audience, right? The audience that needs to be fed this story in a digestible sense on a palette that makes sense to them and that feeds them in a way that they can be entertained, right? Because this is entertainment, but we're telling stories here, right? So I'm going to show you kind of, you know, what this all sounds like together without some of the elements, and we'll just kind of strip them back.
Somehow it's always my fault, the best disguise. But something just don't feel right. Not looking for a fight.
By the way, I didn't want those guitars to really come out and speak. I didn't like them speaking, so I just kind of had them as like another rhythmic feel. It's not really like I guess it's not really like a thing I wanted to highlight. I wanted the bass and the drums to be the highlight, and then that melody, that counter melody to be speaking in the back. But I didn't really want to hear the guitars. I want to feel those guitars, just the pulse of them a little bit, because they have a little bit of a different pulse if you listen to them. Here, I'll solo them out so you can hear the different rhythm of them. Now, if you really listen to this, you have to understand, like, it's basically a hip-hop beat, right? Which I think brings it some modern shit, right? But then you throw these hi-hats in, and it becomes, like, more driving and more punk rock and more, like, 80s rock and roll kind of shit, right? So like, just listen how different the feel is with the hi-hats in and out. I'm going to take them out and just, like, listen to this, and then I'll put them in, and you're like, oh, totally different. Sorry, you're probably hearing double there because I had my thing unmuted. I'm sorry about that. Probably sound like shit. Bad example. But yeah, man, like this is really like, it changes the game completely adding this hi-hat in, right? Without this hi-hat, you don't get that driving. It doesn't sound rock and roll. It doesn't have punk to it, you know? It's just like, it's like hip hop. Like, I'll mute this hi-hat, and I'll put the vocals in, everything in without that hi-hat, and just listen how much a hi-hat can change the feel of a production.
Somehow it's always my fault, the best disguise. But something just don't feel right. Not looking for a fight. You've been saying all the night.
mean, it's insane, right? Like just a hi-hat doing eighth notes is what makes it into, you know, something that turns more punk, indie, you know, just kind of gets different vibes in there that you wouldn't get without it. So that's a big part of it. Verse 2, if you listen to what he's saying, he's really like, yo, I'm going to change some shit. Like, you know, you're setting the bait, you know, and I'm taking it, blah, blah, blah. But like something's got to change, right? And then it goes into the pre-chorus again. And then we go back to the chorus and it's like, you know, you're heartless. Like then it drops to this big drop and everything has to speak to that sound, right? So overall, after I use all these different verbs and all this different compression and EQs and I'm stacking sounds and all that stuff, the next thing that I want to show you guys, and probably the last thing here because I don't want to go much further into this, is that the master chain is on probably, I'd say after I'm about 75% into the actual production because I want to start to hear it all finished out, right? So here's the master chain that I put together for this. I'm doing just a little, this is actually parallel compression on this. I love this compressor. It's a variable mu compressor. It's a Manly basically. So tubes, it kind of tightens things up. It gives me a little more level. And then I got some EQ here. I know Christian was asking earlier, like, yo, my stuff starts stacking, etc. This is a great plugin to see where you're having problems with your frequencies because it solos out bands. So like, I'll show you what that does. So like that's a great tool because this is a mid-side in mid-side mode. So it's a mid-side EQ. So I can actually look at just the middle of the picture and I can figure out what's really chunky in there and take care of it. And you notice I'm not boosting. Like I don't see any boosting going on, right? Like I don't usually boost with EQs on the master. I think that's kind of like an amateur move. If you got to boost something on the master, maybe it's to make the vocals pop a little bit more in the middle, but I would just go back to your vocal bus or I'd go back to the vocals themselves. Once I start getting into the mastering phase, I'm really starting to, you know, shape the sound. The reason I'm even cutting usually is because I look at all of these processors as one unit. I don't look at them as a serial thing. I look at them as a modular thing because that's how plugins and mixing works. Like everything affects everything, right? So when I'm hitting this a certain way, it's going to hit this a certain way, which is then going to hit this a certain way, which is going to, and they all affect each other and not in a serial, like linear fashion. They're very modular, you know? Like if I change something about this here, it's going to change the gain staging and everything before it and after it. It's the way it works. That's how mixing works. If you don't understand that concept, you'll never really be great at mixing. But once it clicks for you, you become like, it's like Jedi shit opens up for you. You know, you're like, oh, gain staging doesn't have to do with just in to out to in to out to in serial shit. It's like everything works together, right? Then like you're like, whoa, then you find like the sweet spot. You're like tweaking all these knobs to find the perfect, like it's like balancing plates, right? The plates are spinning and you're like, oh, I got to find the perfect rhythm. And then all of a sudden you're like spinning the plates and you're like, no problem. That's the way a great mix works. So that's what I have here. I'm shaping with this. I like the BX Digital to use it for a little stereo widening. I don't usually go over 120, 125 at most. You start getting phasing artifacts and stuff. And then I process the sides a little different than I do the middle. I scoop out everything below 50 and it looks like 27 here. I didn't think this record needed like this huge bottom end. It's not a big 808 or anything on it, but that's that. And then FG Red, I love this because it just kind of pushes things forward. And I'll pop this in and out, but again, this is not a linear fashion. These all affect each other.
Scars. You know I die for you, but you wanna see the proof. You got me slowly bleeding out. My heart beneath you.
It's so subtle, but to my ears, it just like pops the vocal a little bit forward and the mid-range a little bit forward, which makes it just a little bit more cutting. To me, I like that because it's like, you know, I like shit to pop. I like transients. I like the mid-range. I don't like things to be like super like muffly or any of that shit. I want them to be wide and spacious and deep. That's why I'm always clearing my mix up, you know? And the Oxford Inflator does that same thing. It kind of brings the imaging up a little bit on the highs, the mids, you know, like the 1K to 5K kind of area. It kind of pushes it up, elevates it in the stereo field. The curve kind of warms things up. It gives me a little bit more bottom, a little bit more fullness. And this is obviously bringing a lot of perceived volume. I'll let you hear that in and out.
You know I die for you, but you wanna see the proof. You got me slowly bleeding out. My heart beneath your shoes as I'm hanging off the roof, thinking about slowly.
Like you hear how like all the reverbs get elevated, and then when you elevate the reverbs and the vocals and the mid-range stuff, you start to also push it forward. But the biggest thing you do is you give it perceived like loudness, clarity. You get more depth out of it. You get all this different stuff out of it. And so I'm just using plugins usually to shape and shift things around, you know? I think very artistically with what I do with plugins, but you have to understand I'm also, I understand all the technicals of every single one of these plugins. Don't get it twisted, all right? So recover, tame, you know, this literally is just like taking the blanket off of everything. And then I'm giving it a big smiley curve, as you can see right here, right? So 2.4, and that's a big plugin for this sound that I like to do and my sound, the radium sound, I guess you could say. And then here's the Ozone 9. Again, I'm getting back here, and because I did a smiley face curve, just making up a little bit for that, right? Pushing the vocals forward again a little bit. Tucking, dynamic EQing out some of this garbage, you know, which gets really chunky in any mix. And then I'm finishing off with Limitless, and I'm pushing the 500 area just a little bit because I want that vocal and the thickness of that track to kind of push forward a little bit. And that's about it, guys. Like, I'm not going to go too more, you know, in detail. The track drops next Friday. Would love your support. I've put the link to pre-download it. If you want to just grab it, download it, check it out. Give me mix notes. Be like, yo, you suck at this, and you should change that, Brad, because you're always telling people what to do with their mixes. I think your mix needs this and that. And I'm like, cool, man. All good. But yeah, we all hear differently, right? Like, and we're all trying to learn everything. You know, I'm learning every day. So just so you guys know, I don't know everything. I've been doing this a long time, and I've you know, I stay up with this shit, and yeah, I'm successful with it, and I make my living doing it. But it doesn't mean that I know everything about this. You know, I got a long way to go. I think everybody does. So you can continually learn, the tools continually shift and change, and you should be using, if you want modern records, use modern tools. That's the key, right? And I'm going to answer some questions while you guys are here. So there's only like 5-10 people on here. So really happy to answer any questions, guys. Like, I want this to be about you guys. Anytime I go live, I'm doing this for you. You know, I could be using my time to finish a project, get more money, you know, send out sync records to publishers, all that stuff. But I want to spend some more time with you guys on the mailing list, because I know that, you know, I don't spend enough time with you guys. So Christian says, are you ever producing into a multi-band to control the bass on the master bus to get the type of sound as a creative tool? Multi-band, I mean, you know, Christian, you got to remember, man, like, this is all kind of multi-band stuff, right? So the Goldfoss is like literally an intelligent EQ that's using multi-band compression, dynamically EQing, but it's just doing it at like so many bands, right? So check this out. Like, as you
Why you gotta be so heartless? Somehow it's always my fault, the best disguise, but something just don't feel right. Not looking for a fight, you've been singing.
And And then also, like, most amateurs that'll watch this, they'll go, man, that Goldfoss is doing so much. Yeah, but it's all doing what I pushed into it. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's not doing that much. If I took it out, I would just shift everything before and after it differently. Make sense? So I'm actually using the plugins as a tool that work all in conjunction and modularly with everything else that's finally feeding to a stereo bus, which it's all affecting each other, right? So I feed it different things. So I could put it anywhere in the chain and I can figure out how I want to feed it. That's what I'm doing. So you're asking about that, I guess multiband compression to me, dude, like if you're just talking about multiband compressors, it's just, if you don't understand multiband compression, dynamic EQing in a way that you've been doing it for 21 years, I think about it differently, I guess is the best way to put it. Because even this Ozone 9 has some multiband in it, right? It's taking care of this. That's a dynamic EQ. It's a multiband compressor. That's what that is. Let's see what else. Yeah, I think those are really the only multi-bands. But yeah, I shape everything with multi-band. I use OEK Soothe 2. That's a multi-band. I use the C6, C4 stuff. I use de-essing. De-essing is a multi-band. I use FabFilter Pro Q3 and I turn it into dynamic mode, and that's multi-band, right? So come here and you go dynamic, make dynamic, multi-band compressor, dynamic EQ. Same damn thing, right? So yeah, it just depends, man. Like depends. As opposed to the traditional idea that should only be a separate mastering task. Here few people say, should this be getting achieved before it gets to mix bus for bass heavy stuff, but I find it hard to achieve before stereo. Yeah, I'm shaping everything as I go, man. When you drop in the radium DNA serum so I can just have all your knowledge. Yeah, man, I'd love to do that. I was thinking actually of making you guys, like, creating different, like, analog synths I have and designing different synths and putting them into the sampler in Logic so you guys can play my synth patches and stuff, and just making like 100 of them or something and selling them for like dirt cheap, some shit like that. I think that'd be really cool. So you guys can just open it up and you wouldn't need a Prophet 6 or a Juno or anything, and you could just open up my shit and you can play it right there in Logic. I don't know if you guys be interested in that sort of thing, but I do a lot of producing. I talk a lot about mixing and mastering, but I produce and write songs and do all that stuff, maybe even more than I mix and master. So yeah, that's kind of it, guys. Like, there's some cool synths in here that actually David had a couple synths in here that I really liked. I added this bell one during the chorus. I thought was really cool. That hi-hat pattern is actually an analog synthesizer, so that was pretty fun too. And then I put a P22 spreader on it. PS, this is a great plugin too. I actually picked up this plugin from Jason Joshua. He uses like 2 of these in a series. I really thought it was a cool spreader. I never thought to use it, but this is an analog synth that I actually just designed the Prophet to do like a hi-hat pattern like this. And it just adds more speed, man. We want some speed sometimes without, bringing the BPM up. I want it to feel like a ballad. I want it to be sad, but then I also want it to have different parts where it speeds up or feels like it speeds up, right? Because of hi-hats, because more kick drums, because the bass is going at 8th notes, and then the drop kind of takes you out of it and you're like, you fall into some weird space and you're like, what the hell is going on? And then you come back into the song and the story, and then you hit like the last drop, and it's like humans, like we're humans. We don't think in a linear fashion. Our stories don't go like that. Well, you guys, I picked up a computer. I started producing, then I won a Grammy, then I made $1 million, and now I'm successful and happy. That's not how a story works. right? You hit roadblocks, you fall off cliffs. Coronavirus happens out of nowhere, right? Like shit happens, and that's what I want in a song. I want those dynamics of what that is. I think the idea of pop music nowadays and keeping people like in this like la la land kind of like, you know, hypnotized, it's cool, but it's just not something I strive to make. It's not something I strive like, oh, I want you to feel cool all the time or happy all the time. No, I think the best music is the music that is very, it's very bipolar. You have people that absolutely love it. Oh, I love this song. It's absolutely incredible. And then you have people that are like, this is terrible. It's dog shit. And I would never make anything like this. And I think that's the best art you can possibly make in the world. If you're in the lukewarm middle, are you making art? I don't know. Maybe you're just making like sound-alikes and, you know, I don't know. It's just kind of boring to me, right? Like, but that's just me. Everybody's different, right? Like, I don't want to hear la la, you know, pop music all the time. I want to feel the pain, the suffering of people, and then I want to be taken out of that pain. I want to hear the conclusion. I want to hear like maybe things didn't go so well. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of like how music goes for me. And yeah, I like to make pop records. Cool. But, you know, they're not as fulfilling for me. That's it, guys. Hey, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Like I said, click that link that I have posted up on the comments. Actually, I don't think I actually posted it on the comments, but it's in the comments of this video. Or the description or something, I don't know. But go download the song. Go pre-download the song. It comes out the 19th, so it's next Friday. And it'll be available everywhere. And of course, you guys like would love your support if you do like the song. Go stream it up. Go add it to your playlist. Share it with some friends. If you hate the song, go you know, thumbs down it and be a hater all over online. I'm cool with that too, as long as you talk about it. All right. Appreciate you guys. Have a good Friday night. And salud.